Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our hosts, Sri Rajgopalan, Peter V.S. Bond, and Brian Gildenberg explore how brands and retailers engage consumers in an increasingly digitally driven world. And now, here are the CPG Guys.
Hello and welcome to this CPG Guys podcast where we explore the omnichannel digital journey of brands and retailers. I'm of course your co-host Sri. Please listen to my daughter's music at www.riaraj.com. That's RHEARAJ.com.
Yes.
And follow the exciting adventures of my younger daughter at Dream Academy by Hybe and Geffen Records, launched by Universal Music, on YouTube or Instagram. Joining me today, of course, is my co-host and friend, the Managing Director of Retail Cities North America and host of the Gildenberg Omni Comment and Fast Forward, Brian Gildenberg himself. How are you?
I'm doing great, Sri. And really, anytime I get to see you in person, it's like my own personal dream academy.
So how do we achieve this personal dream academy? We're
especially coming to you live from downtown Cairo, like we are today.
There we go. Right behind us is the actual pyramid. If you look carefully, you can see it pointing upwards. That is not Mount Fuji up top. And we're actually at grocery shop at the time of this recording, and we're lucky to have a guest today. So before we get to our guest, let me remind everyone to subscribe to our podcast. Go to your favorite platform, and if you use Apple or Spotify, please give us a rating. It helps us feed the algorithm and actually makes our podcast more findable.
It does.
We want to express how honored we are to be rated the number one CPG podcast 2 years running according to FeedSpot, the leading podcast ranking authority. And we're pleased to have joined us in our top 30, our sister cast, CPG Scoop, Fast Forward by Brian,
there we go,
and the FMCG Guys.
You know what? You know where Fast Forward is the number one marketing podcast? Trinidad and Tobago. We're rocking it.
We're happy to be formal sponsors on Next Up, whose mission is to advance all women in business. We're giving away memberships to this prestigious network and orgs, so drop us a line at contact@cpgguys.com to learn more and take advantage of what Next Up has to offer. Links to our podcast, our sister cast, and our landing page on Next Up can be found in the digital liner notes of this episode. So let's get to the main event. And in our main event today is our guest, who joined the Bayer organization in 2013, making his way up from a pharmacy business manager, also known as a drug channel here in the US, to UK e-commerce lead, to now being VP of e-commerce and omnichannel for North America. Prior to that, he is an esteemed 10 plus years as none other than a brand from which you have had so many a guest, Coca-Cola.
That's true. Yes.
Of course.
Right.
In 2022, he assumed the role as VP of e-commerce and omnichannel for North America in his current role. Today's conversation is sure to touch the intersection between physical and online, a true omnichannel conversation. Back on September 17, 2022, we featured Chris Heimbach, U.S. Head of Sales, Commercial Strategy and Ops at Bayer. So Ajay will be the second to come on the CPG Guys. Ajay. Right. Like that, huh?
Or AJ, as he's known to everybody else.
I'm spoiled for choice here today.
Yeah, there you are.
So.
Join me in welcoming to the podcast, I guess, Ajay Sharma. Ajay, great to be with you in person here at Grocery Shop 2023. Welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me here, Buff.
Sure thing.
It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, it has. It has. We've been stalking you for a while, so it's good to finally land such a celebrity. So
there we go. Finally, we found the celebrity.
Yes.
We say that in jest, but at the end of the day, Ajay, your role in this industry and what you're doing to shape it, coming from an esteemed brand like Coca-Cola, now Bayer, it's a big deal what you're doing for the industry. And one of the ways we give back is on this podcast, is to share that knowledge. So genuinely, thanks for making time, especially at a conference, to do this with us. The digital liner of this episode will include links to your LinkedIn profile, Bayer's LinkedIn page for our listeners, and so that they can access it from their phones itself while they listen. So, but before we get to the questions I've prepared, can you take a second and tell us what your role is at Bayer?
Sure. So as VP e-commerce and omnichannel for North America, my role is made up of sort of three areas. First area is leading the commercial team, so having full responsible for our e-commerce and omnichannel P&L. The second part of it is owning and leading the center of excellence, so everything from content and consumer experience. And then the third part is around leading our capability building for the organization as well for e-commerce and omnichannel. And as we get into the conversation, happy to share some of the things that we've been doing.
Looking forward to hearing that from you, so I'm going to jump right into it and go to question number one.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Straightforward. Take us through your career journey from school in the UK. I'm not sure, did you go to school for pharmacy in the UK, to pharmacy management, to Coca-Cola, to Bayer, and now moving over from brick and mortar full-time into e-commerce and now omni-channel on top of that? Just take us through the years.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if you asked me 5 years ago that I'll be running North America for Bayer, I would have laughed at you. Actually, my career started. I went to the University of West London. I actually studied business studies, and as part of the third year, I had to do a work placement, and that work placement took me to Coca-Cola. Before coming back, I completed my final year. My dissertation was actually on Coca-Cola as well. And I think when I graduated, I got asked to join their commercial grad scheme. So when I joined their commercial grad scheme, that took me through a number of different account manager roles across multiple channels, everything from education and workplace, independence, wholesale, and grocery. Bayer at the time, fast forward 10 years, Bayer were going through an interesting period of time in the UK where they wanted to operate more FMCG-like. And I thought it was a great hook to take some of those skills to an organization that hadn't historically operated that way. And that's when I first joined Bayer. And actually, as I look at breadth of experience, I'd worked in every channel apart from pharmacy or drug. So that was the initial hook, for breadth of experience, but then also reapplying some of my skills that I've learned in traditional CPG. So I actually joined heading up the drug channel or drug wholesale for Bayer in the UK. And it was funny, e-commerce at the time for me was a bit of a side hustle. So as we start looking at strategy for our business in the UK, one of the growing or emerging areas was this thing called e-commerce at the time. And I took it on as a side project. And what started off as a short-term assignment then led to a fully fledged role. What then led from there was me doing a stint in our global team in Basel, Switzerland, as they wanted to replicate some of the success that we had in the UK. And I think when I moved to Basel, I was heading up global e-com capabilities, so working with key markets to help build their e-commerce and omnichannel capabilities. And I think that was probably really eye-opening to me in terms of breadth of what's out there and what we can learn from other markets. I then started working closely with the US market, which then led to this opportunity, and let's say the rest is history. But if I look at my e-commerce and omni-channel journey, the last 5 roles I've done within Bayer haven't existed. As e-commerce and omni-channel has grown, I've grown with it.
Excellent. And let's spend a little bit of time now unpacking the phrase omni-channel and what that means to you in terms of, as you think about the ways in which omnichannel plans need to get developed and the work that needs to take place to get that developed. From your perspective, what are some of the best-in-class things that you've been able to do in order to be able to really start to bring the concept of omnichannel to actual life? I mean, you and I talked about this a lot over the years. In terms of what it actually takes to make an organization more omnichannel, like not just have an omnichannel function, but actually make the company itself more omnichannel.
Yeah, and the first part of that. First part of the answer will be around where you are on the maturity scale and what needs to be done. And I think, the fundamental learning that I've had in building omni-channel plans is fully understanding the role of e-commerce and omni-channel within your organization. And that has to be the starting point rather than just doing things within this space.
Right.
And I think once then that becomes clear, the rest of the sort of where to play and how to win then becomes a lot easier. Now, in reality, it's not, because I think the fundamental problem that a lot of CPGs fall into at the moment is that we still manage my brand, my channel, my budget, rather than following the shopper. So the heart of the answer is, where is the shopper going? What are the insights? And then how do we solve for it? And to shoppers, it's just shopping. And how do we capture a point of conversion, be in-store or online?
Well, is it also fair to say that I think, one of the things that I think has matured, if you will, and as an organization matures, oftentimes the team that's responsible for e-commerce, particularly like a global team, is responsible for fighting fires and solving problems. And there's a shift somewhere along the way in the maturity curve where omnichannel goes from a problem to an opportunity. And you're able to sort of figure out what the opportunity looks like on the other side of that. And you're working with the teams that are responsible for the broader business and pushing them to see what the opportunities are, right? Like, is that sort of a maturity thing, or is that just is that something that companies can kind of fast forward to coin the phrase?
Yeah, it's a bit of both. And I think there is an opportunity to fast forward, but I think it all starts with what your strategy is and becoming clear. And again, one of the key learnings is be inspired, but don't try and replicate what others are doing. And I've fallen into that trap before as well, where you try and replicate strategies and structures but it's very different to where other companies are versus the maturity curve that you're at.
Is it,
And
time
it
for,
impacts
is,
everything.
is it time for me to say there's a 0.0% correlation between any specific structure and success in this industry?
Correct.
Good. Okay,
Yeah.
I just did. So,
The interesting thing that comes to mind is I've been at e-commerce at PepsiCo, both at Frito and Pepsi, Johnson, and don't want to give you my resume here, but at fairly
please do.
large brands multiple times before settling into a slightly different role now. And I gotta tell you guys, the amount of obsession there was each and every time over the org model and the need and desire to make sure who reports to who, to be able to get the right value out of the channel. It's still mind-boggling today. Instead of that, if people just did their jobs and they chased external thinking and focus, a lot of these problems would get solved, such as this conference. Be here, show up, get network, get the most from it. Thoughts, gentlemen?
Yeah. I think the other part is actually supporting functions around what you'd call the core structure. And what we've found in my learnings is you can have titles and structure don't mean anything if the enabling functions aren't allowing that core team to do what they're hired to do.
Well said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that's true, and I think the other interesting piece is that so often what you're trying to solve for in structure is really usually workflow, and you don't need to solve structure to solve workflow. It's just people gravitate to structure issues because whatever.
Easier?
Consultants like to sell it, first of all, and secondly, because they make a lot of money, and secondly, people are opportunistic from a structure point of view, and that's unfortunately where you don't get the best side of everyone when you're having an org redesign conversation. The other interesting thing, which may or may not have been something we were talking about an hour ago, is the way resources flow in an organization becomes incredibly critical, right? Because unless you really work at it, no structure in the world is going to change the way money naturally flows in your company, right? So the metaphor, Sri, that I was using before is it's like the Colorado River gets to the Grand Canyon, right? Like you can't just take a couple of buckets of water, dump it to the right, and hope the river is going to go around the Grand Canyon. It's not going to do that. It's got thousands of years of evolutionary pattern that flow resources a certain way. Unless you really think about how the resources flow differently, no structure in the world is going to change anything because you're still going to make the same decisions. You're still going to put money in the same places.
Yeah, and again, we were talking. A lot of it aligns from the starting point of the role of e-commerce and omnichannel within the organization, because once that's clear, sort of top down, and people buy into it, actually, in theory, resources should flow and ladder up back to those overall goals. I think the trap that some CPGs fall into is that we have overall arching business goals, and then there are individual goals that don't ladder up to anything. And that leads to a mismatch when it comes to call it digital investment.
Well said. Individual goals that don't ladder up to anything. So I want to go to one particular area now, which is getting impacted by the org statements you both have made, and I chimed in on, which is our favorite word here on the CPG guys, also known as retail media. Now, in that world, I would love your thinking on this. First of all, a lot of companies now are obsessing, and we need to get the org right. That person needs to sit in this org, otherwise it's not going to work. That's how budgeting works, blah, blah, blah. How do you approach retail media? Like, what's your suggestion? How do you secure budgets for it? And then how do you advise people on planning effectively and measuring?
Yep, sure. I think there's lots to unpack within retail media, but when it comes to a bit of advice, certainly from my learnings, is firstly, I think once you follow the shopper and you're sort of clear on your priorities around the channels that you want to play in, and within that, the customers that will drive what you're trying to achieve, retail media comes as a natural flow as to where to convert and capture that shopper. And I think that's number one, where a lot of CPGs either don't pay enough attention or they rush into just playing it everywhere, is be very clear in terms of what you prioritize and what you want to go after, because your investment choices should then mirror those strategic choices. And a lot of times there's a disconnect because retail media, everybody's then trying to spread everything everywhere based on retailer demands. So number one is, those investment choices should mirror your strategic choices. The second part is, just because you do that, you need the agility to move and pivot where you need to, because some of these things won't work. And a lot of the time, we don't hold retail media fully enough to account in terms of conditionality and what we're getting back in return. And I think The third area is I don't think we're paying enough attention to future platforms as well.
Right.
So there's one element of day-to-day, which keeps the business going. And then the second part is around, well, where do we need to win in the future and how do we build that equity? So a good example would be, social.
Yes.
So, 71% of Gen Z shoppers are now using TikTok as their primary mode of search.
Shout out to our Fresh 4 co-host, Andrea Lay, for that factoid.
How do we understand those algorithms? How are we approaching that channel when it comes to retail media, when we're sort of forward-looking as well? So,
but be serious, guys.
Yeah.
How many brands understand that TikTok is a medium of search?
I would say very few.
I lost a bet on it last week.
I would say very few.
Decompose. How did you lose the bet?
Well,
as in there are more brands than you thought, or it's
I was part of that conversation.
Basically, I made the mistake of disagreeing with Andrea, which is almost always a way to lose.
That's how you lost the bet.
Yeah, I disagreed with Andrea. I was wrong.
But you feel many brands do get it?
No, I don't think there's. I mean, I asked you earlier. It's like, and I don't think there are 150 people in the consumer packaged goods world that understand how TikTok search algorithm works. So I just, because I don't know, and certainly how to influence content to reward that search algorithm in any meaningful way. I don't think anybody in a big company's got any. This is like Instagram 5 years ago, right? Like before Meta figured out it was just easier to sell it than to have people actually earn it and win it. But for now, you can't buy TikTok, really. I mean, you have to actually legitimately earn the algorithm's respect and earn attention on the platform. I don't think anybody's got their head around this at a big company level. This feels like one of the ways where small companies are really kicking the butts of big ones, to me.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, a lot of people don't understand it, and this is where how do you move past vanity projects to actual the role that social can play, within your overall strategy, and that will vary from category to category. So even for us, where we have a number of different categories that we play in, from nutritionals to pain to allergy, each one of these omni-channel platforms will have a different role to play. So how do you get to the bottom of what role does social really have to play within your overall plan, and then you activate accordingly rather than just activating social.
Well, this gets into an interesting question then around measures, right? Because so often the opportunity is, or the gap sometimes is, so if I don't know how to measure it, I can't do it. And it's like, so we shouldn't do it if we can't measure it. It's like, well, that's not usually the actual real life way to solve the problem. Like, if something's important, do it and then learn how to measure it. Don't make the things that you can measure important. Measure the things that are important, right? There's a difference there. But from your point of view, I know that there's a lot of measures right now when you think about commerce in terms of digital shelf and content and search and all that stuff. And I guess my question would be from a metrics point of view, that stuff's all like important to the day-to-day, right? But how else are you thinking about what measures of success are, and how many measures of success should you give a commerce team? Should you give them, if you want 100 different outcomes, should you measure 100 different things? How should you think?
So my view on metrics are fairly simple, actually. It's certainly for me, I found that depending on the audience and what you're trying to achieve, simple is sometimes better in order to force action. So consistent metrics across different functional groups is something that a lot of CPGs should do. And I found success in this both at Coke, but also at Bayer as well. Let me give you an example.
Yep.
If you think, e-commerce is no longer a sales or a commercial or a brand, it's a mix of everything. You cannot win if everybody is not on board. So how do we make sure we have the right simple KPIs where everybody's measured on the same thing across 3 to 4 functional areas? And I would look at it in very, 3 areas. First one is a digital shelf metric, which is all the actions that you take to improve the digital shelf.
Given that we're in Vegas, table stakes seems like an appropriate phrase.
Table stakes. Hey, look at this.
You got poker chips?
Look at us. Yes. Yeah. No, I've got some in my bag. So
we're in Cairo, remember?
Of course, yes. Good casinos in Cairo.
So digital shelf metric, and if you get your digital shelf metrics right, they've got to be a commercial metric. But then there's also got to be an external share metric. And I think if you can limit and simplify to at least those 3 metrics that are consistent to our brand and commercial functions, that will help drive the action,
Right.
but also keep us consistent in what we're trying to measure back up to omnichannel.
Yep.
Now, within that, let me start to unpick this a little bit. We talk about enabling functions. Supply chain will have their own KPIs. Commercial strategy will have their own sort of KPIs, but they have to ladder back up to those three metrics.
Yep.
Because if we're not laddering back up to those three metrics, we can't be going off in different directions.
Well, and I think too, to tie back to a remark you made earlier about organizational maturity curves, right? I think that there's an argument for getting a little bit more granular about what you measure from an inputs point of view.
Yes.
For an organization that doesn't have the same level of commerce maturity. But once you know that the inputs are going to happen, when you measure the outcomes and the outputs, you let teams make decisions, and that really enhances speed.
Yep.
Fair statement?
Yes, it is. And show rather than tell, because the fewer KPIs you have, it's easier to influence by showing rather than e-commerce and omnichannel by PowerPoint.
Yeah. And you've seen some companies that are excellent in e-commerce, including one we were talking to last week, that almost make a point of telling the teams, no, measure at a higher level.
Yeah.
Don't disempower the team by measuring too granularly. Let the team decide how to get to that outcome because they are confident the team knows how to do that. There are situations where you might not be able to do that in a different organization because your team wouldn't know how to get to the outcome. Yeah. So you got to measure some inputs a little bit.
And this is almost like that. We're having this conversation about true empowerment and promoting sort of let them be the decision makers. It's actually allowing them to make the decisions and run with it. And I think that varies based on where you are, again, on the maturity curve.
Right.
But again, look, just to give everyone confidence as well, I've been at the other side, or the entry level as well. I've been the one-man band where it's, we want a 5-year plan and you've got zero budget to deliver. I've been there as well. I had to pay $30 out of my own pocket to create a hero image back in the day just to prove, proof of concept.
Out of your own?
Yeah. Proof of concept where it was like, what is this thing? I worked with a company to create a hero image just for proof of concept.
Right.
Did it myself.
Yeah.
Put it out there.
Well, hopefully those days are long gone.
Well,
those days are long gone. But again, I've been on the other side of it where it's like, what is this?
Well, so much of that hero imagery work came out of the UK, and it was just that one dude at Unilever, Oliver Bradley, who just was doing this as a hobby, right? And built like a whole litany of intelligence around hero images, just like because it was something
he will never know, or maybe he does. Yes. But the industry owes him. For making digital content images for a PDP. As profound as they are today.
Oh yeah, no, I know. He's one of the one of those weird baseball analysts that discovered that you should try to hit home runs all the time.
Look, and I go back 10 years. It's funny enough you mentioned Ollie Bradley. He actually helped create that image with me.
I'm sure, that's what I figured. So,
and you had to pay him $30.
Not him. Not him. Don't worry. He helped me co-create it. I'll pay this agency.
I was going to send him a note today. Ask for $30 back. 30 pounds, not bucks.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do have a measurement question before we move on here, which is, companies still measure e-commerce numbers, which is primarily your pure play numbers, and they judge success based on that. Does that feel right?
So purely measuring on numbers will not give you a
Sales
view of what will in isolation will not give you a complete picture. I think it's an internal metric. That's why I think when it comes to metrics, there's got to be some view of how you then benchmark versus the competition or what you're actually measuring against. Mm-hmm. That's why a commercial number in isolation, for me, it's a good internal number. But if you're up 50% year on year, you could still be behind the competition. So that's why I think, when we look at those three simple metrics, you've got to balance off the internal with an external metric. Mm-hmm. A, it could be a reality check. But B, keeps you grounded in terms of what's happening externally.
Well, and I think because share is so important to you as well, because I know how you think about stuff, it's also interesting because people will pick apart digital share metrics all day and that's not right. That's not what's well, can we just agree that it's wrong, right? So we'll start from wrong, but look at the drivers and let's measure the change in it, right? So the absolute number matters way less than the delta, right?
And my view on this, and we were talking this. Use those digital shelf metrics. Don't get caught up in the detail. Use it as a directional measure. Otherwise, you could argue about the quality of data. It's there to tell you that it's either good or it's not good enough. And that should be the starting point for those conversations.
Measure the direction, not the absolute.
Correct.
So let me remind our audience that I'm speaking with Ajay Sharma from the Bayer Company. Technology and terminology alert right here. Buzzword of the day. artificial intelligence. How are you personally learning and keeping pace with what this is? And how do you connect it on your day job as head of Omnicommerce? You like the brand Omnicommerce?
Yes, it's a very good
Good word,
buzzword.
another buzzword.
Yeah, almost as good a buzzword as AI. So we're getting there.
So yeah, I mean, we've waited 20 minutes, and I was waiting for AI to show up. So I think, look, AI is a form of technology, advanced technology, and it's always been there. I think it's just getting more sophisticated. So there's one thing around keeping up with the latest trends in terms of what's out there from a tools and tech point of view, and then how we're looking at it is we're looking at the right form of tests and learns, but more importantly, how I'm thinking about it is what role can it actually play to help automate, make things faster, and drive efficiencies across the organization. And those efficiencies could come across and manifest themselves in a number of different ways. As we'll get into it, there could be something around speed to content, for example. There could be automation, for example. How can we scrape search terms a lot more quicker in real time and make some faster decisions that will allow us to update more real time? So I think there's a number of different ways that we could play out. We are testing and learning with some of the AI, but so far with some of these areas, particularly within healthcare, there's a lot more human eyes on the outputs of some of the initial forms of AI. So I think there's two things. It's how early it still is in its stages, but B, the future opportunity that it could hold and will be coming. So, we're working with it, we're utilizing it, but we're not rushing and doing anything sort of totally drastic with it. But we are preparing ourselves for the future, knowing that it will create efficiencies.
What do you recommend people, or what do you suggest, or what's been your own personal learning way? Just reading articles? Like, how do you conquer this beast of got to learn AI and it's everything and it's going to control our future and oh my God, the aliens are here?
Yeah, I mean, look, genuinely, it's outside of the normal industry events. This is an e-com capability. Fact, in general, is you have to part self-learn some of these things, and then you have to part build capability around more formal training for your organization as well. Now we're very fortunate. We have an analytics and insights function. Who are at the forefront of looking at what tools, technology is coming sort of more down the line. The second part of it is, investing in training to make sure people can actually use and understand it. So again, having AI is one thing, understanding it and how to use it is another. And this will come onto when we talk capability as well later on.
Well, and this also builds into the next question, which is that basically if you're trying to feed AI, you need to feed it with data, right? So there's a lot of data in the world, and this will come as a surprise to everybody. But you've got a bunch of different data sets now that are important in an omnichannel world. You've got your pre-existing commercial data that comes from the retailers. You've got consumer and shopper data that's coming from a variety of places. You've got retail media performance numbers that are coming in. You've got digital shelf data. How do you sort through all that? Like, what are some of the decisions that you think an organization needs to make around data? What are the things, and then how do you really put it to work for you in a high impact way?
So hopefully you've seen a theme just around sort of broad strategy and everything laddering back up. Data is no different, because I think once you're clear on what you need to achieve, you can then start to pinpoint what you currently have and what gaps that you have from a process point of view, but then also from a data point of view. Across those different areas, from a shopper insights, brand, digital shelf, commercial share, for example, each one will require different data inputs. I think the trick is less about the individual pieces of data. It's knowing what to do with them and how do you stitch those together to give you a longer term output to help you make the right strategic and executional choices. And that's the disconnect that I see within CPG, is that data exists and pieces of it exists. We don't know what to do with it all the time. And this is where, again, the metrics come back in, because overall strategy, overall plan, what are you trying to measure? And then have you got the right inputs to measure the outputs? And
that connectivity piece is so important too, because so many companies are going out and hiring data scientists because they're told they're supposed to. Data scientists are like chefs, right? But if you don't have food, hiring 6 chefs doesn't make the restaurant better, right?
Correct,
Yeah, so, and the skill sets around engineering data, cleaning it, managing it, the kind of the grungy work of the data world, like the work that what data engineers do. I think data engineers, for those people that are less familiar with the data world, you're going to hear less about hiring data scientists and more about hiring data engineers to cleanse data, to make it food, so that data scientists and AI can both use it better.
Yep,
So, and that's where the connectivity piece comes in. Right?
Correct, and agree with that. And I think when we talk about laddering back up, it all comes back to that uniformed or a unified source of truth as well, that the organization's measuring omni-channel on. And you can manufacture numbers to give you a story by function if you want, but how do we really push down, there is one source of truth that we're measuring against that we use collectively as an organization.
So the one thing about data that it's not a worry, but on occasion I get concerned by the proliferation of how much data we have and how many data sources we have. Majority of decisions for most brands are either based on their syndicated data platform, that could be Circana or NIQ, depending upon who the provider is and what the brands have selected. That's how the company's bigger picture decisions are made, goal setting is done. They have about 60-70% coverage of everything that the company sells, but that's how the decisions are made. But then you have goal setting is made. Then you have 1P data that's coming in many forms these days, which is allowing marketing plans, at least an input into marketing plans. It's not syndicated. Then you have retail data that's coming along, not just with retail media, but as a whole separate ecosystem. I mean, this list is pretty long and I can go on and on and on. What do you recommend to those in that space that are in data and analytics to manage all these data sets? Like, is there one is better than the other? You got to be an expert at everything. And then who takes on this crazy task of clean rooms and bringing, now I finally know clean rooms is not about bleach. So how do you bring all this stuff together and do it? I mean, is this something the industry's conquered?
It's something where I think some CPGs are doing better than others, but I don't think anyone's fully conquered it quite yet, in my opinion. So I think, look, from a data point of view, I think part of it is, again, I think depending on the metrics that you choose to measure, you can make them as complicated or as simplified as you want. But having the right data sources to give you that output is going to be the starting point of identifying the role a Nielsen, a Circana, a digital shelf provider, a share metric provider would actually play within that. And I think a lot of, again, CPGs, from my experience, they want a bit of everything. And problem is we get too confused in the data that can be manipulated in very different ways. And I think certainly within this space, you've got to be comfortable with directional information in some aspects, and then we'll get more granular where you need to get more granular as well. But again, a lot of it for me comes down to, have you got the right omni-channel capabilities from a data point of view, that the data scientists, engineers know what to do with it, and that's what we rely, insights and digital team to actually do, which is, by the time it gets to us, it's not about questioning the data. We trust the data to then make those strategic and executional choices on.
So I'm going to jump from there into data as a segue into talent.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm still a little not 100% convinced that talent exists to mine all that data. We've had another buzzword alert: data scientist. Right? I can claim I'm a data scientist because I've worked for IRI for a good 5+ years and did a lot of data deep digging in platforms that aren't as easy and sophisticated as they are today. But that leads me to talent. Does talent truly exist that's omni-channel in the CPG industry? And what virtues are required to be successful as an omni-channelist, if there was such a word? For example, my pick is, I feel curiosity is the number one topic. Without that, good luck. I'd love to learn. And Brian, I'd love for you to chime in after that as well.
Sure.
Talent, virtues in this space. What matters, what doesn't?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack within talent, but let's start with...
You personally have come from pharmacy, Coca-Cola, brick and mortar, e-commerce, now omni-channel, now leadership.
So I think a good way to start this conversation will be mindset over skill set. And I think, those skills around curiosity and transferable skills, do not undervalue the skills that you have currently built within sort of CPG. and breadth of experience, because this space is moving at such a pace that, any experience or knowledge that you might have had a year ago is already out of date. The skill set is something that can be learned, which is number one, mindset over skill set. I think the second part when it comes to talent is there's two ways, certainly, how I think about building talent. Again, once you know all your strategies and the role omnichannel has to play, yes, there's a balance of bringing in the right external expertise where you have very specific gaps to help kickstart the engine. But CPGs will only win if they develop their organizational talent and invest in capability building. And there's two parts of capability I look at it. There's infrastructure capability, and then for the purpose of this conversation, there's skill capability. And that goes across our commercial teams, our brand teams, our supply chains, our legal teams, our finance teams. So my advice is, don't think just sales and marketing when it comes to omnichannel. You have to unpack it and identify the roles those enabling functions have to play within your overall plan, and have a coordinated strategy in terms of how you're going to build that. And again, it's no different to the 70-20-10 of, on the job development, formal classroom, and then some form of mentoring. But if you don't tackle it, if you don't address it, if you don't plan for it, you end up in this no man's land view of where you will participate, but you will never win. And we've built that up over the last sort of couple of years. That's allowed us to give us a good platform for talent as well. If I look at my organization, everyone across those three areas of my organization, I want in other parts of the business as the next rotation, and I want other people.
So the thing that intrigues me is, and Brian, I'll toss this to you, and Ajay, I'll ask for you to chime in after Brian. Can you take a, let's say, 2.5 decade brick and mortar veteran and teach him omnichannel skills? Like, I feel a decade or a decade and a half digital veteran is very hesitant to learn brick and mortar. So why should the other side be expected?
Well, it's interesting because this is the build I was going to ask you to elaborate, because we've talked about this before, and I like the notion that you expressed at one time about thinking about, well, look, I need people that know e-commerce and know how to work an organization, right? If they've got one of those skills, I can teach them the other. I can't teach them both, right? So the person's got to bring something to the table, right? So I do think, I'm sure this is a sort of a pet thing of mine. I think that, yes, I think there are more people that grew up brick and mortar that need to understand the digital world. Sure, yeah, of course. And I think that organizations that are smart will purposely design roles for that, to take people that are quote unquote legacy brick and mortar and have them spend some time in the e-commerce space with that ecosystem so that they can learn it. I think at the same time that I think the digital world gets let off way too easily sometimes in terms of being excused from understanding how large-scale, rigorous commercial planning works. And that, to me, is one of the biggest problems I think organizations are facing today. I don't think digital teams understand how large companies actually make decisions when they have to choose. For years, people that grew up in the e-commerce space, I'm sure you know this better than I do, never to choose, right? You just did stuff, and whatever happened was incremental because nobody planned it, right? Like, nobody planned your Amazon volume 5 years ago. If it happened, great. It's the analogy I use. It's like when your 7-year-old draws a stick figure picture of the family, and it's like, oh, awesome, new incremental art. I can hang it on the refrigerator, and it's adorable. When your 7-year-old decides to paint something you're going to hang in the dining room, no, that needs to actually look a certain way to fit the overall concept of the rest of the room. If it's going to be actual art and not just incrementally happy art, it's got to actually look so that it fits the rest of the room. And I don't think digital teams, by and large, have embraced the responsibility that comes with the decision rights that they've been given as their businesses have gotten much bigger and much more incremental. My pet peeve on this, which is Prime Day, which is that people are just dumping a ton of money and resource on Prime Day because it's wonderful, but that stuff, is going to get baked into the plan at some point. Anniversarying Prime Day 2 years from now is going to be an absolute pain in the neck for big CPG companies, in the same way that anniversarying some pointless BOGO at Publix has been a pain in the neck for years. You get this stuff baked into the plan, you'll be doing this for 100 years. after Amazon has stopped existing, you'll still be running Prime Day ads to anniversary the volume that's now baked into your plan. Sorry, that wasn't a question. What do you think, guys? What do you think, AJ?
To build on Brian's rant, the only thing I would add is let's not forget the role of brick and mortar as well within this overall equation, which still has a significant part to play in many CPGs. So when we start looking at developing sort of talent in other parts of the organization, I almost don't need them to go from 0 to 100 being a digital expert as well. But what I do need is how can we help them develop to understand those omni-channel plans within their retailers and build upon it. So I think there's always a balance of, knowing the role that brick and mortar has to play, and stepping up, in terms of that capability training plan, in terms of how we get them to a certain degree of knowledge. I mean, at the very fundamentals, it's like, how can everybody at least understand the terminology that we use? And then we start to build upon it. And ultimately, CPGs will have to do a competency assessment in terms of, it's a big question, but is your talent good enough, depending on where you want to go?
But would you agree that the reverse should be true as well? Those that are digital experts, they need to learn the brick and mortar world.
100%.
Are they coachable?
100%.
Are they coachable?
I think, yes. It looks, again, from my opinion, they are. And I'll tell you the reason why. Because if you think about how, let's take the likes of Amazon have evolved. In Amazon, you've got to know commercial, you've got to know financial, you've got to know brand, you've got to know supply chain. It actually gives them a very good introduction level to the broader parts of the business. If we're really going to win in omnichannel, I want, people in my team to actually be in other parts of the organization, A, to learn those areas, but B, they then become the enabling functions that will enable the next wave of, call it, the Amazon team to go and deliver. And I think if you cycle that longer enough, that becomes your 70% of my 70-20-10 of on-the-job development. But this doesn't happen overnight. And this is where, again, the role of omnichannel within your organization and how leadership perceive it and what they actually do with it.
Well, and I think, too, that one of the things that I've worked with clients a lot on in my world is trying to help them understand the difference between decisions and choices. So I think that level of experience that you get, like in an Amazon world where you work across the different functions, I think that teaches you how those functions make decisions. I think where I see digital teams being weak is not about how your company makes decisions, but how they make choices. Decisions are go, no go in a tactical situation. Choices are about where resources are going to flow. And I can only do so many things because I only have so much money and so much bandwidth. And how those choices get made is not, and I think that's the maturity level that comes next in the digital world, is understanding when you get that seat at the table, when you're reporting to the general manager, the marketer, knowing how that general manager makes resource allocation decisions and how they're going to sometimes choose not to allocate resources to you, but need to allocate resources to something else. The maturity to be able to then handle that, manage that, and make do with less than you asked for, I think is going to be an important capability for e-commerce teams as their growth begins to plateau. I mean, when we look at the next 5 years, it's a weird thing to say, but in the retail cities where they come from, we've got e-commerce forecast to grow at 9% a year over the next 5 years. Value discount in the U.S. is going to grow at over 8. Like, for the first time in a long time, e-commerce's growth rate is going to start to get more normalized within other channels of retail that are growing. So there are going to be choices to be made about where resources go.
So I'll leave it to you for the last question.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I was babbling. I forgot. So, so the last question we always ask is the fast forward one, because that's why I get to ask it.
That's the podcast he does.
Yeah,
so
there you go.
Fair.
So it's if only I had a podcast called that. But if you were looking just at the future, right? Like what are some of the big trends that you see that are going to shape this industry over the next 1 to 3 years? What do you got your eye on?
Yeah, I'll summarize probably what we've we highlighted a couple of these trends earlier on. AI obviously is one of them, and I think it's more about the rise of AI and knowing the role that it can play and how companies adapt it to drive efficiencies. I think the second one, big one for me, is around social, and we talked around social.
TikTok. Yeah.
TikTok being one of those examples. How big TikTok is, how big social could be, and how underprepared some CPGs are within this and not paying enough attention to it will be a trend to watch, because I think those that can manage...
You mean overall social commerce?
Correct, yeah. But within that, I think TikTok will be at the
prominent one.
the prominent or the heart of
Even though
somebody's growth.
Congress has tried to ban it and failed a few times.
Yeah, I mean, legal issues aside, as we talk
outside of the state of Montana and Congress, yes, it will be a big deal. So yes.
Is that a fact? State of Montana? I didn't know.
Well, the state of Montana was trying to ban TikTok at some point, so the 9 people of Montana are now outside of the TikTok universe. So, shout out to the people from Montana.
9 less impressions.
Yeah. And the last part would be, are brands and CPGs prepared for how to connect all this as part of their omni-channel strategy as well? We talked about investments, we talked about costs. How do you split these investments and costs in line with priorities across these multiple touch points? Retailers and platforms will be something that CPGs have got to manage better and make some tough choices, as sort of Brian mentioned. Mm-hmm. And sort of lastly, I think, we talked around how do you delineate between executional improvements versus transformational change. And we talked about skill capability earlier on. Infrastructure capability will be another big one.
Matters as much.
Yeah.
Which we can hopefully, could spend another whole podcast just on
that data example that we discussed. If you don't have the infrastructure to be able to harness it, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah. Well, we didn't even touch on things like supply chain.
Right. Nope. Well, we have many topics to come for the next time we have you on. So.
Hey, maybe, just maybe, when we fast forward 6 months and we get to Shop Talk, we can have you back and get into some of those episodes.
And hopefully we'll have the same view of Cairo, so we could...
Part two coming soon.
Yeah,
same view of Cairo. Here we go. So let me remind our audience, you can find all of our content on the cpgguys.com URL. And of course, we have 7-day-a-week programs, so do check us out on LinkedIn as well. If you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com. Again, contact@cpgguys.com. And maybe you can join us on the podcast just like Ajay here did. Don't forget to drop us a rating at cpgguys.com on the navigation bar at top. And I can't say thank you enough time. 26K followers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ajay, thank you for making time, being busy enough at this conference to come out here, spend an hour with us, get this discussion going on all things omnichannel. We value your attendance here a lot, and I want to say thank you.
No, thank you to you both. It's been a pleasure being here. Really enjoyed the discussion. Look forward to part 2.
Mr. Gildenberg, thank you as always. I want to ask you to summarize it since he just did.
Right. Okay, there you go. So I could just summarize by saying that if you meet AJ, he prefers to be called AJ. So.
AJ, there we go. Thank you to AJ. Thank you to Brian. That's a wrap for this episode of the CPG Guys. Catch you again soon.
Take care.
Thanks.
The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.